Welcome to the December 13th, 2024 Fresno City Council special meeting. The time is 3:09 p.m. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Arias. Present. Councilmember Maxwell.
Present.
Councilmember Chavez. Here. Councilmember Bredefeld.
Here.
Councilmember Esparza.
Present.
Vice President Carbasi. Here. And Council President Perea.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to give Councilmember Bredefeld one last chance to lead us in a pledge of allegiance. Sir, please, will everyone please stand? City Clerk, are there any changes to today's special meeting agenda?
I have received no changes to the agenda.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Maxwell, seconded by Councilmember Bredefeld. Any objection? No. Item passes 6-1. All right, this moves us on to our one and only open session item. We have received written public comments, and these comments will be accepted and included as part of the public record today. At this time, I'm going to ask any speakers who would like to speak on this item to go ahead and come forward. Bernard, do we have any yellow cards in the basket? This is the 3:04 p.m. item, actions pertaining to a memorandum of understanding between the City of Fresno and County of Fresno. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. If you have not yet already done so, please go ahead and fill out a yellow card and bring it to the front. Up first, I have Darren Rose.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Council. Council President, members of the Fresno City Council, and staff here. Darren Rose, President and CEO with the Building Industry Association. I want to thank and congratulate you for holding this meeting and crafting an MOU to help shape the future of Fresno, as well as economic development in the city for the next 10 years. So on behalf of the 80 plus members of the BIA, we fully support this MOU and hope to see it passed and moved on to the county next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I have Corinne Demetrios.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a personal word of thanks. I am in favor of this agenda item, and I want to say a word of personal thanks to you, Council President Perea. Under your leadership, something that's been a real long time coming. I wanted this last Christmas for a present, and your dedication and leadership got us here today. So I just wanted to personally thank you for your dedication and perseverance to do a really hard thing. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Walter Smith. Hi, Walter. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Walter Smith. I work with Pearson Realty. I work with a property owner in the vicinity of Church and Armstrong. It's very nice to be at the stage with the MOU. Just want to make a note that totally in favor of the annexation and the MOU, and thank you so much for all of your effort. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Up next, I have Will Oliver. Hi, Will. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President, members of the City Council. Will Oliver, the Fresno County Economic Development Corporation, here to support the tax sharing agreement that has been proposed by the ad hoc committees from the city and the county. This agreement will certainly help reduce risk and uncertainty that projects face when a tax sharing agreement is not in place. So we currently support that. It will remove one less barrier from investment and economic development to occur. So we encourage you to support this. Also want to thank the members of the ad hoc committee, both currently and all those that have taken part of negotiations since 2020. We realize that this is an iterative push and pull process. I'm sure that there are things in this agreement that both sides can agree that, maybe they don't 100% agree on, but it's definitely a step forward. So we appreciate those efforts and, again, encourage support of the tax sharing agreement as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card I have is Ethan Smith. Hi, Ethan, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Council President, Council members. My name is Ethan Smith. I work at Newmark Pearson Commercial, and I'm also the chair of Invest Fresno. I was here last week supporting a discussion on how to allow the city to continue to grow. And this agreement that's been negotiated, as best I understand, will further cement the city's ability to continue to grow responsibly into areas that make sense. And with respect to the details of the document, the folks that have negotiated this, I would defer to your expertise. As Invest Fresno, though, we see this as another sign that the city is doing the things necessary to continue to promote investment in the community, economic development, allow for people to afford homes in this community, different kinds of homes, and hopefully we will see a positive outcome today. So we would strongly support the MOU as negotiated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Please go ahead and come up at this time. All right, seeing no one else, I will close the public comment portion for today's agenda and bring it back up to the dais. I'm going to start by saying a few words, and then I'm going to pass it off to my ad hoc committee members to say a few words as well. But I do want to thank everyone who took the time to either come here today in person or who submitted a letter either in support or opposition to this item. I'll start by saying that this MOU, I believe, is a game changer for the city and county of Fresno, and also remind everyone that we have not had an agreement in place in about 4 years, which has resulted in much uncertainty for the future of growth in our city. And not having an agreement in place, I believe, is one of the several reasons why our city is experiencing such a drastic housing shortage. It was mentioned yesterday that we, as a city, have invested over $360 million to incentivize affordable housing and homelessness in the last 5 years. And while we have made great progress when it comes to housing and providing additional homeless resources to our citizens, we are not building housing at the rate in which we need to properly serve the residents in our city at every income level.
Council President, I need a point of order. Can we get a quick 2-minute recess? I'm sorry. It's really important.
Sure, yeah, I just got a request to take a quick 2-minute recess. I do want to respect that. So we will be back at 3:20. p.m. We're back from our recess. I'm just going to continue by diving a little bit into what this MOU actually accomplishes. And I'll start by saying that this agreement is coming before the City Council today. It will go before the County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday. So the community still has about 5 days to read through the document and to continue to provide input on their thoughts on the actual MOU. But I will say that through this agreement, the City of Fresno will be seeing an increase in property and sales tax revenue to our city coffers. I'm going to start by just briefly talking about property tax. There was a one-off negotiated property tax split for the Southeast Development Area. This will result in an increase from 38% to 51%. But I think it's really important to note that this MOU does not approve any development. For as long as I've been on the council, we have not had any public discussions as it relates to the merits of the actual SATA project. And so I do not know where my colleagues today stand on SATA. We do have 2 new council members coming on board next year. I do not know where they stand on SATA as well. And so I think there was a lot of miscommunication in some of the comment letters that I did receive. Folks were asking us not to approve SATA today. This agreement does not approve any development. What we're simply doing here is just taking a fiscally responsible move to where if a council next year does approve the Southeast Development Area, the city will realize a higher property tax split. And again, that split will be from 38% to 51%. Outside of SATA, the city will see a property tax split share increase from 38% to 40%. And we also had, I feel, a win when it comes to sales tax. We successfully negotiated a sales tax adjustment from 5.35 to 5%. And so what this means is that each year we are estimated to see approximately $500,000 more in sales tax being retained here in the city of Fresno. And as we are moving to a point of uncertainty heading into the budget process this upcoming fiscal year, I think it's important for this council to get creative when it comes to how we increase revenue here in our city. These are the funds that pay for police services, fire services. These are the funds that pay for our City of Fresno employees' salaries. And so this agreement, I believe, is historical for a number of reasons. We started negotiations early summer, and you can see how long it's taken us. I want to commend my county supervisors that we worked with, Supervisor Mendez and Supervisor Pacheco. They put on a very tough but fair fight, and I respect that. I do believe this is a mutually beneficial agreement for both the city and the county. And it's important to remember that the city's residents are the county's residents. So this, to me, is an agreement where we all win. I'll end by just thanking my council ad hoc committee, Council Vice President Kerbasi, Council Member Maxwell, the mayor's administration. We could not have done this without the support from Mayor Dyer, City Manager Ruthie, Jennifer, Santino, Kelly. I'm going to continue to miss people. Our city attorneys, Brandon, Jen Q, Talia, and everybody from the county side as well. There was so much time and effort that went into crafting the development that we have in place. And again, I do believe it is a mutually beneficial agreement to both the city and the county. And so today I am respectfully urging my colleagues to support this agreement so we can finally have the surety and the continuity that our city needs to responsibly move forward. With that, I'm going to give the floor to Council Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President, and very well said. And forgive me if I repeat a few little things. Your speech was that good. I've read all the public comment we received. I've had numerous calls today with different stakeholders, and I've listened to those present here today. And thank you for taking the time on a Friday to come to the council meeting and express your thoughts on this important item. I truly value the input. I've heard from many of our labor groups, like FCEA and Local 202, our firefighters, and others who support this process and understand the need for Fresno to grow its revenues without overburdening residents with tax increases. And I want to thank our public labor partners for reaching out and sharing their thoughts and for their support of this plan. You know, it's really important that Fresno looks at how it increases our tax revenues, as the council president mentioned. It does cost money to provide the services, and we are a service business, and our services are provided to the hardworking families that keep our economy growing. And they love their parks. They love being able to call 911 and get a professional response. And God forbid they should have an emergency and a fire. Having that professional response from dedicated firefighters and so many other important city employees that drive buses and pick up literally garbage and keep the city clean and safe. So I feel very confident. I'm pleased with the work of the ad hoc committee and our partners. This is a good agreement, and I think it's going to help Fresno and ensure its financial future. I just want to reiterate what Council President said. I want to thank my fellow ad hoc committee members. I mean, this is you guys are champs. There's a lot, months and hours of very careful negotiations with our counterparts at the county. I do also want to thank Supervisors Mendez and Pacheco. Also, City Staff Mayor, thank you very much. I want to thank City Manager White. I want to thank Ruthie. A lot of hours, Ruthie, a lot of meetings. Director Clark, thank you so much. I know I'm going to leave people out. Forgive me. From CAO's team, Andrew, Brandon, Jen Q, District 2 residents are the best. Thank you all for your professionalism, and I really look forward to the consideration of my council members and thank them for that.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Council Member Maxwell.
Thank you, Council President. Keep my comments relatively brief today. I want to start by thanking again my ad hoc committee colleagues, Council President Perea and Council Vice President Carbasi. I was happy to help out on this process where I could, but honestly, the credit goes to our amazing leadership here on the Fresno City Council, which is these two. President Perea, it was, your ability to keep a calm head and negotiate, stay focused on the needs of Fresno residents. It went a long way, and in my opinion, has resulted in one of the best tax sharing proposals we've seen in many years in the city of Fresno. I do believe that it's irresponsible for a municipal government to be operating so long outside of a tax sharing agreement. Clearly, if it were an easier process, we would have had this resolved by now. This was not our first bite at the apple. It took several years and it took a few attempts. But luckily, at the end of the day, we were able to come to mutually agreeable terms with our friends over at the Fresno County Board of Supervisors to get this agreement. I do want to say that, again, this agreement does secure a more equitable property tax split for the city of Fresno. Before we were getting a 38% split compared to the county 62%, and now we'll be receiving between 40 to 51% of that split, depending on the location of development. And the agreement will also help secure hundreds of thousands of dollars more in sales tax revenue for the city going forward on a yearly basis. And so, again, this is not calling for the annexation of SEDA. I'm not asking for my colleagues to make that decision today. That's a conversation and a discussion for another time. But let's put this 4-year headache behind us. Let's secure more revenue for our city going forward. And again, thank you to my ad hoc colleagues. Thank you to our administration, City Attorney's Office, and everybody at the Hall of Records who put so much time and energy into making this happen. It's much appreciated and much overdue. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Member. I'm going to call next on Mayor Dyer to say a few words.
Thank you, Council President, and to all of the council having this special session today. As you know, 4 years ago, when I first became the mayor, I made a comment that we were going to get a tax sharing agreement in the first 90 days of my administration. And unfortunately, the political environment at that time was different than it is today. But the reason for, and those discussions obviously were short-lived, because we're talking about money. We're talking about money that is shared between the county and the city, monies that are precious and few, and monies that support resources that both the county and the city have. But it was my belief then, and I know it was the council, that the tax sharing agreement at that time was not equitable because there was a 62% allocation for the county and a 38% for the city of Fresno. And at one time in our history, we were at close to a 50-50 split, especially on the infill. And the reason this tax sharing agreement is so important is because it used to be about 1/3 of our revenue for the city of Fresno was sales tax, 1/3 was property tax, and 1/3 was other. Well, today, that number for property tax has risen to 40%. So getting property tax is so important for us if we're going to continue to provide the level of service. So I want to say thank you to Council President Perea, Vice President Carbasi, Councilmember Maxwell for initiating the discussions again with the county. I know we've had periodic discussions over the last few years. And thank you for involving my administration from the onset, having Assistant City Manager Quinto sitting at the negotiation table, processing all of the numbers and so forth. As we all know, this was a very time-consuming and expedited process, and with a lot of impromptu meetings, multiple versions passing between the city and the county in a single day, as we've seen here as of late. And I want to say thank you to the City Manager White. We canceled a lot of meetings suddenly to make sure we were able to address all the concerns. Again, Ruthie Quinto, a special thank you to Jennifer Clark. Could not have happened without you and your insights to all of this. The City Attorney's Office, Andrew Jans, Brandon, as well as Jen Q, sitting back there quietly, as well as all of the other support staff that we have. The simple fact is the tax sharing agreements are very complex but very important. They're important as it determines how annexation occurs, how development occurs, and they have huge ramifications in terms of future development discussions, annexation, sharing of revenue, et cetera. So the fact we haven't had a tax sharing agreement in place for over 4 years, it really is, as Councilmember Maxwell said, it's inappropriate and a disservice. I do believe that this agreement strikes a balance when it comes to developing areas within the Southeast Development Area as compared to areas that are both substantially developed and unsubstantially developed. And I readily admit that there are still areas in this agreement that need to be addressed outside of the agreement. One of those is going to be the fire transition fee when annexation occurs. I'm very confident in the future we'll be able to address those fire transition fees. And then the other one is having an agreement between the city and the county in terms of mutually agreeable development standards when a project is developed in the county within the sphere of influence of the city. And the reason is oftentimes those standards are different, and then when we do annex, we have to spend millions of dollars to bring that particular area up to our code. So those things have to occur. As this was a very expedited negotiation, along with a lot of complexities, I'm certain that there are going to be additional areas that we discover down the road that will need further discussion. And I know that this agreement does not meet all of the needs of the city, doesn't meet all of the needs of the county, which means it's probably a pretty good negotiated agreement. But I do believe at the end of the day, this agreement will provide long-term benefits, financial benefits to the city of Fresno and to our citizens, and in turn enhanced service levels from police, fire, et cetera, to the citizens of Fresno. And it is imperative that we have this tax sharing agreement in place. Otherwise, we're forced to do these one-off agreements when we do annexation, like we did on the Fanuki property, which is not the right way to go. And I do believe also, as you've heard from people, it does create uncertainty and stymie the development growth within our city, and ultimately see more and more development occur in our neighboring cities like we've seen in Madera. And again, we're losing out on those property tax dollars. And we are developing a lot of infill affordable housing, but remember, as we all know, affordable housing doesn't pay the bills, In fact, we get no property tax from affordable housing, so we have to have development elsewhere as well. And this tax sharing agreement will support that. So I want to just close by saying I want to offer my support for this agreement. Again, thank the council and encourage them to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we hear from the rest of my colleagues, I do want to make a motion to approve file ID number 24-1699. This is actions pertaining to an MOU between the City of Fresno and the County of Fresno.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Up next, I have Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Council President. I thought we were having our last meeting up here yesterday, but we have a surprise extra bonus meeting today. I want to thank the committee for the work. I know that having been on the first negotiating committee a couple years ago, Mayor, when we met with our friends over across the street, wasn't necessarily productive, but it's like that old saying that says elections have consequences. I think Councilmember Bredefeld and I winning our elections kind of set the stage for more collaborative efforts. We hope to continue that. I think that's what our colleagues here can expect from us over there. We're good at creating spaces for our folks to move into. Going back to 2020 when the MOU expired, I was never a fan of just completely not renewing a version of that. I think Councilmember Carbasi and I were the ones that voted against that. Severin, I knew back then what consequences that would have, and I think we're seeing a lot of that today, but today is the day when we're trying to correct things that were done in the past. And I also want to address, because I also, such as my colleagues, got a lot of emails from folks that I think have a misconception about what this is. So I want to, for the record and for their benefit, clear that up. As my colleague mentioned, we are not approving any specific plan today, whether it's SADA, industrial plans, or any other residential plans. I mean, I think today is just a very straightforward tax revenue sharing agreement that has been outdated and, quite frankly, archaic based on the needs that have grown in the city of Fresno. I think for me, I still having my city perspective hat on. I see the needs yearly basis with general fund, what that will mean for our services, core services, and everything that we provide as a city. Having said that, I mean, maybe when I get to the county, I might not think so much like that anymore. So now is the time to have this conversation. But I do have a couple of questions, because I do want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to weigh in on all of the different growth plans that we'll have. City Manager, I know that, obviously we're referencing SADA in here. The conversation, I think, a week ago or the last council meeting was that our staff was getting ready to finalize the infrastructure cost of what SADA would be. And did we come up with a timeline on when we would be releasing that, or is that still in flux?
It's still in flux, but I would say it could be within the next, 30 to 60 days, perhaps.
Because I want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to, vet that and go through that. And what I will say about that, because we received a letter that day and then also additional comments. I think having been in the building for 14 years now, I've seen SEGA transition from SEGA to SADA to, maybe we'll change the title of it differently, but at the end of the day, it's about how the city grows. I've seen various different versions of that conversation, and I just want to make sure that for the record, we're clear on what that will look like. I think when SEGA was developed by Keith Berthold and Nick Jovino back then, it contemplated, X amount of rooftops. We're obviously going to be looking at that based on, various number of indicators, whether it's growth, population, but I can tell you as the representative of Southeast, the 48,000 people that have grown in our city, I think 42% of those are in Southeast, which is one of the reasons why we've needed so badly to invest in those neighborhoods here. City Manager, you have a couple questions with regards to some of the provisions in here. So first of all, the conversation about the water piece here. So right now, as it stands, is it correct to say that the city of Fresno has an allocation of water for the whole city, including southwest, including southeast. Do we have enough water capacity right now to support those?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The other piece of this is the definition, and I think the mayor alluded a little bit to it. I don't know who's going to answer that. I would like to know what the definition of substantially developed is. I think maybe Ms. Quinto, you're going to be addressing that question.
It's on page 4. Where's page? Yes, so substantially developed means real property prior to annexation has an improvement value to land value ratio equal to or greater than 1.25 to 1, as determined by the assessor's records, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you put that in plain language, Ruthie?
Push to talk. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon. And yes, I'm happy to. So in the ratio as it's defined, just to give you a practical application for substantially developed, typically would refer to an urban or suburban parcel or group of parcels. For instance, if we were going to annex one parcel that had or one piece of one area that had a land value of $575,000, but the improvements on that were $900,000, the ratio would be 1.56 to 1. And it would be considered substantially developed. So you could take that example and apply it to any number of scenarios.
When you look at, say, for example, a county island like Calawa or Mayfair or Fig Garden, right? That's where the definition would fit in.
Most likely, yes, although I will say that there are, and Jennifer, you may want to comment on this, there are smaller parcels that could potentially be annexed that would not have improvements on it that would therefore require it be exceeded. So if someone came forward with just a parcel that was vacant, for instance, and but they were in Fig Garden or they were in the Sunnyside area, it could still fall under the not substantially developed definition.
Okay, and just for the record and the benefit of the public, I think we've gone through a couple of versions of this, whether we're going to annex Calawa or another county island. I think my district was the last one to actually annex a county island over by Belmont and Sunnyside neighborhood. It's quite a bit of process. In just my opinion, I don't think we should be annexing any county islands unless it's initiated by the people that live there. I just want to put that on the record. Have that conversation take place for them. Anything under, believe it's the 150 acres or more has to go through the LAFCO process, Prop 218, correct? Plan Director?
So annexations would require an evaluation under this proposed MOU, regardless of the size. So regardless of the size, this MOU says if we're going to annex land, we will follow a certain process.
So, and this is I want to be very, very, very purposeful. Previously, 150 acres or more, you had to go through the complete LAFCO process. Does this not allow for that anymore, or does it just any type of annexation has to go through the process?
So unless we are accepting road dedications from the county, or we are specifically annexing public right-of-way, we have to follow this process that's outlined in this MOU.
And I saw the provision at the end. This process would essentially supersede any previous agreed upon process that we would have, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Page, if you could, I don't know if Ruthie, if you're going to answer this, or Jennifer, on page 9.
Councilmember, I just want to, real quick, this agreement is the same as the previous expired agreement with regard to the requirement for annexations.
So the 150 acres standard still stands?
The old agreement, I don't think, had 150 acres.
What was that?
Huh? We're talking
Yeah,
about.
we're uncertain where the 150 acres is being referenced.
That's what traditionally LAFCO has utilized, I think, in our previous conversations.
So I think the previous tax sharing agreement and this tax sharing agreement do not take the 150
No.
acres into consideration. It's a different process.
Would LAFCO still be included in this conversation should the city decide to annex territories?
Yes, they have to be.
They must be in the state of California.
That's what I wanted to confirm, because I got a couple calls from people that weren't unsure, and I think, Mayor, you were copied on some of those emails. I just want to make sure for the record we're clear on that. Page 9, I don't know if it's going to be Ruthie or our city manager. I alluded to that a little bit earlier, the split on the cost of what this would look like for SADA. And you look at the maps, it's obviously in phases. You look at what that will look like should the council adopt something like this. The 50-50 split, and then the 60-40 subsequently that we have on there. Would this formula that we have now alter the cost of the infrastructure for SADA? Because now the city is receiving additional revenue from our tax sharing agreement. Would that be factored into whatever that will look like, whether it's a Melrose district or a CFD conversation?
In our opinion, yes, it would warrant evaluation. We would need to go back and look at specifically CFD 18, which was formed to provide additional revenue for public safety services. And one of the reasons why it was formed was because the 6238 did not provide sufficient revenue for us. So depending on what part of the city, whether it was Southeast Development Area under that split or the rest of the sphere, we would have to go evaluate to see if CFD 18 was still necessary from a services perspective.
Sure. So that would require a recalibration of whether we even do a CFD 18, depending on what model is used for the development, correct?
Correct, but I do want to make it clear that I don't believe for instance, in SADA, this is not going to address the infrastructure needs that are going to need to go in, water, sewer, things like that. I think the additional revenue will help us with the services, providing the ongoing services, police, fire services, that we need to provide in any part of the city.
The cost of the infrastructure would be separate and apart from the ongoing
Most likely,
correct?
yes.
Okay. And then on page 14, and I thought this was an interesting observation. I think there was a conversation earlier that alluded to it. The fire district fee conversation, how is that configured and how much is it? Is it per parcel size? Is it once a dwelling is built? And what is the dollar amount to that?
Okay, so Jennifer, step in here, or Ruthie. So right now, when we annex property that is currently in the Fresno County Fire Protection District, the Fresno County Fire Protection District boundaries, I believe, almost mirror the County of Fresno boundaries. So when we annex it into the city, what happens is, what happens currently under our current fire transition agreement, which will expire next year, is we have to cover the property tax that the Fire Protection District would have received if we would have not annexed them for 10 years. So we currently collect 10 years worth of fees. There's a formula that finance, and I believe they work with the assessor's office, generates, and we collect that fee from the developer, and then we turn that over to the County Fire Protection District.
Is that subtracted from the amount that we would utilize to cover our fire protection?
So currently, no. So currently what happens is they get paid 100% as if the property was in their district and they were providing service, they still get that money, but then we annex it into the city and we provide the service with our revenue.
Isn't that double taxation?
I don't want to answer that, but
And I'm not putting anybody in the spot. I just want to make sure we flesh out all that, because there will be conversations that we deal with. And I'm very interested in what that looks like, because you're essentially assessing a fee, paying it to an entity. They're not providing the service, but yet they are taking a percentage of that. And not to, muddy things up, but that's similar to what happens with our Clovis Veterans Memorial District, where there are folks that are being taxed and assessed here, but are not receiving direct services. That's a separate conversation. So I just want to make sure that the public understands exactly what that will entail for future conversations. And so what was the dollar amount again for that fee, City Manager?
it varies per annexation. It's a formula, and it's just basically whatever the property tax bill would have been for that property for the county fire protection district. They get to keep that money. So it varies. It just depends on what the property tax bill is for a particular parcel.
Okay, I'm definitely going to look into what that formula is as I, put on my county hat over there. And then last thing I'll say, and this is the part that I think was very encouraging. We've not seen this before, but the provision on top of page 14 where it talks about the cooperative efforts and legislative reform. I think provision 8.1, city and county agree to work jointly on state legislation and appropriations that would improve the fiscal condition of both city and county. I was really happy to see that memorialized in there. I think that's what Councilmember Bredefeld and myself hope to bring and be that bridge between the city and the county and the work that, because at the end of the day, we're serving the same residents. They're not, they don't have badges that say city and county as residents out there. Those are all my questions, Council President. I want to thank you, your team, for, getting this agreement done. I know it's not easy work, and it's a good first start. Obviously, in the next couple of years, we'll be looking at what that looks like. I'm really curious as myself to get in there, and I think, Mayor, you and I, we asked that question when we wanted our county folks to quantify what services they provide for the city of Fresno. I want to make sure that as we are transitioning over there, that we're addressing the needs of people in the city of Fresno. 54% now, 53% of our residents are in the metropolitan area, and we need to serve those folks as well. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Member. Up next, I have Council Member Arias.
Thank you, Council President. Legal counsel, as you know, we're involved in pending litigation related to alleged violations of the Brown Act. Can you articulate for the record under what provision is this considered an emergency meeting that we have to take this on with such short notice to the public and to the council?
Thank you for the question, Council Member. So before the special meeting was set, I'd met with and spoke with our city clerk, and we agreed that under the Brown Act, emergency meetings of this nature can be called. It was called 24 hours prior to when this meeting began. We also, one second. I'm sorry, I used the word emergency meeting. This is a special meeting, which is something different. But under the Brown Act, we believe this is compliant. We think that it was properly noticed. And in terms of CEQA, there's a requirement that we list the CEQA exemption on the agenda, which we believe we complied with. Talia, can you come up here and talk about our compliance with CEQA in terms of having this properly agendized?
I'm okay for that point. I just wanted to clarify. I understood the meeting to be posted as special emergency, but you were clarifying that this is simply a special meeting?
Correct.
All right, thank you. My other question is, we've been without a MOU for how long? Has it been 4 years?
That's my understanding.
What is the time-sensitive nature that we need to take action today? Is there anything that's pending legally, financially, that requires us to take action today versus, versus besides listening to our two colleagues here soon? City Manager, is there anything before us that's stuck in the queue in the development space, or any financial exposure points, or is there legal liability that requires us to take action today versus this being posted at the next regular agendized meeting and giving the public sufficient time to review the enormous agreement here?
From a legal perspective, there's no requirement that the city enter into an MOU today with the county.
What about financially? Is there a financial emergency? Is there something, a permit pending? Is there something that requires us to do this today, or that would be put at risk if this isn't approved today?
So I would tell you that there have been a number of projects that have not been submitted due to the fact that we do not have a valid tax sharing agreement. And at times, and there was at least one that was rejected by the county as a one-off tax sharing agreement. So there are projects that would be in the process, but aren't in the process because we don't have a tax sharing agreement.
Can, as you know, this is a significant item with extremely short notice. I just got this last night, came in this morning at 7 a.m. to review it. Can you note those for the record? What are those projects that either have not been submitted, or what is a project that the county has declined for lack of an MOU? I'd like the records to reflect.
I believe it was Ms. Demetrius' project,
What project
California, and I can't remember what the annexation. Hold on a minute.
Sure.
The project that the council approved but is still waiting and pending approval at the county is 199 single-family lots. It's actually would start to bring in an island within the city at Willow in California. So it is one that has been sitting, I believe, for a year. May of 2023, over a year it's been sitting.
And that's because the county refuses to do a one-off agreement like they have in the past?
Correct.
And that's the Board of Supervisors or the county staff?
Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thank you. We just want to make sure that the record reflects those facts, because something of this magnitude, in my view, should have been scheduled, a regular scheduled meeting, given the public enough time to review the document, council enough time. For the record, I have not had an opportunity to meet with city staff on any of these negotiated points to ask any of the questions related to the financial impact or the environmental impacts or the development impacts of this proposal. So I am very hesitant to engage in this conversation, because typically on minor items like us, building a park, us buying a playground, it gets posted, we have at least a week notice, we have ample time to meet with staff and ask questions, we have a debate here, we have an opportunity to delay decisions if more time is needed. In this case, this is a 15-year agreement that is unprecedented in nature, that in my view completely unwinds the city's general plan, that we spent millions of dollars developing and several years in public meetings agreeing upon, and it's being done in a way that seems to be only driven by the fact that one project is being held up by the Board of Supervisors. In a city of 500,000 people, I don't see that as being sufficient rationale to rush to this debate, especially since the board, from what I understand, is not going to consider this till next week. So my question is, why can't the council and the public have more time to review the points of this this agreement before we're asked to take action on it? It's pretty if you all don't want to, then I'll ask some questions about the actual agreement that I was able to identify based on my quick read this morning. City Manager, you've indicated to Member Chavez that the city has continuously been subsidizing fire services has been providing fire services to city residents after they're annexed into a city. And instead of collecting the property tax assessment for those fire services and keeping them to fund the fire department, we are simply transferring them to the fire district that does not provide them service?
No, we collect, once we annex it, Jennifer, correct me, once we annex into the city, then we get the property tax.
And we provide the service, right?
However, we must have a transition agreement. And so the transition agreement currently says that we must pay 10 years worth of property tax to the fire protection district. So how we've been accomplishing that is collecting.
If you can pause there, City Manager, just want to make sure I'm understanding you and I'm following you. Do we start providing fire services immediately to those residents that we annexed?
Yes.
So we provide fire service immediately, and for the next 10 years, we're not keeping the property tax that should be coming to us?
So Cortese Knox Hertzberg, which is the law that governs annexation within the state of California, requires that any special district, when you transition from being in that district to another district, that there is a tax sharing agreement between those two entities. In this case, we're talking about Fresno County Fire Protection District. So our annexation or our transition agreement with Fresno County Fire says that the city will determine what is the current tax that is being paid by that property to Fresno County Fire. Cortese Knox says we multiply that by 10, and there's another formula, but our agreement, our current transition agreement says we will take that 10 years and we will pay that to the special district, in this case, Fresno County Fire. We pay that, it is paid by, typically by the applicant, and passed along to the buyers if those are individual single-family buyers or to a business. In addition, so that property has paid 10 years worth of property tax to Fresno County Fire. In addition to that, they continue to pay property tax to the city of Fresno, which pays for our services, and city manager can take from there.
And just so you know, when you get a property tax bill and you have State Center Community College District bond, Fresno Unified, there is a line on it that says Fresno County Fire. And so that's the portion of the property tax that we're talking about that we must remit 10 years worth of to the fire district. We still keep the rest of the property tax.
We don't keep the full amount. We send a portion to the fire district of the county, technically?
No, not annually.
It's paid in a lump sum up front.
So you get the lump sum from the owner up front?
Most of the time. If it is a development, yes. If we are...
And so, if I may skip ahead, that agreement expires this upcoming year?
In August, yes.
And if it was to allow to be expired, it would be a financial benefit to city residents to not continue that agreement or to continue it?
Well, we have to have an agreement if we want to annex property. So
would you seek to have the same agreement?
No. And I believe the MOU before you is it could either be extended or renegotiated. And our goal is to renegotiate it.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to. Page 7, section 2.4, which makes sense why industrial developers are in the room today, support of this agreement, establishes an alternative standard for what you're calling economic development and job creation. What exactly does that mean? Are we going to set a completely alternative path for industrial development within SADA or within the rest of the city? What is the intent of that provision, and what is the practical application of it? It is section 2.4 in page 7. For the purpose of promoting economic development and job creation, an alternative standard for annexation for significant industrial and regional commercial uses is hereby created.
And
Which
that
tells me
is-
that didn't exist before.
Yeah, that is no change from the prior MOU.
What is the practical application of that section?
So a practical application would be a very large commercial shopping center like an El Paseo or a River Park or a Fancher Creek. So that's a very large development.
So there is absolutely zero changes from the existing MOU in this section?
Yes, correct.
All right. Okay, just want to make sure. 'Cause
Well, we moved it was in an exhibit.
It was in Exhibit 1, and it moved from being an alternate standard identified in Exhibit 1 into the body of the agreement.
Okay. But the content has not changed.
Correct. The content of significant industrial and regional commercial has not changed.
And the reason I'm asking is, again, we got this last night, and it's very hard to follow of 27 pages what exactly has changed. The other section that I noticed was, walk me through the tax rate adjustments. Let me give you a specific example. Page 8. There's been a lot of percentages referenced out, 70-30, 49-51, 60-40. Specifically in downtown Fresno, if we take the empty parcel on Tulare and Van Ness that's undeveloped and probably has a value of undeveloped property, and it becomes a hotel, a commercial use, what does the current existing MOU indicate in terms of our share of that property tax?
So just a reminder that these rates only apply for future annexations. So since the parcel you're describing was annexed years ago, it would be whatever the split was at the time it was annexed. We have hundreds of property tax rate areas in the city of Fresno. Ruthie, I don't know, hold up your, almost 800. So we could look up that exact parcel if we had the APN, and we could tell you what the split was, and it was established at the time that the property was annexed in. So this agreement has no bearing on parcels that have already been annexed.
Understood. And that's what I'm trying to clarify for the public.
Okay.
We are leaving the same tax, this agreement leaves the existing revenue split for already developed properties as is, even though they become developed for a higher use and a higher value?
If they're already annexed.
Not necessarily developed.
Say that again?
Not necessarily developed.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. So the substantial development definition that you guys have created, how does that apply to an already existing annex parcel in the city?
It doesn't. That is only for new annexations.
So it's business as usual for any existing already annexed property, whether it's developed or undeveloped in the city of Fresno?
If it's already annexed, it's business as usual.
Okay. And so when you talk about the Southeast Development Area, you're going from 38% city to 51%?
Correct.
We're going from 38% to 51%.
To 51.
Oh, sorry. I thought that's what he said.
That's
Yes,
what I
thank
said.
you. Oh,
It's
okay.
my broken English. From 38 to 51.
Correct.
Is that for a undeveloped parcel of ag land going to market rate residential?
It's just annexation. So it's regardless of the development. It is the annexation. So when, in some future time, whenever, and if and when the city decides to open up SADA, and that's not what this agreement does, but whenever that is.
It just defines the financial incentives for doing so.
Not necessarily, it just sets forth what the financial split will be.
And is it fair to describe it as currently the city would only get 38% of the property tax? With this agreement, we get to 51%. So if we are in desperate financial need as a city, which every indication is we're going to be, then us expediting development in that area would be to our financial benefit.
Yeah, I think, Council Member, while this is not specifically about SADA, when you bring up SADA, a lot of the advocates that historically protested against SADA have complained that development doesn't pay for itself. And as the city manager said earlier, this will actually help us pay for ongoing services. So it's a step in that direction once we actually someday build
But
it out.
it's not fair to say it's not about SADA when you have a whole section on SADA. There's a whole section on SADA.
And
so it is about SADA.
well, I mean, it's about many things. SADA is one of the areas, and frankly, if you look at the old agreement, there were sections on SADA as well, I believe, and several areas. So while I understand the point that I think you want to make, it is 51 a larger number than 38.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I mean,
Is SADA, is there a SADA section in this agreement?
yes.
Okay. The other.
No, there's not a SADA section. It is one of the defined areas of the financial split. There's different splits for different areas. And SADA is one of the areas that has a different split. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It's one of 3 different financial property tax
Is it kind of like
splits.
how in like downtown, for example, the
What would
urban
be the
core,
other two?
there's a higher split? I'm sorry?
What would be the other 2 areas? You referenced
The
3
other
areas.
2 would be everything outside of SADA. And then the third one would be de-incentivizing the annexation of county islands. And so we increased that property tax split 70-30.
Okay. The other portion on page 12, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, because the state mandated directives and including without limitation, the county may consider approval of zoning amendments in areas that are not currently planned for urban development in order to meet its obligation for housing. In layman's term, that means that the county is authorized to, has the authority under this agreement to authorize new towns to be developed in county areas. Isn't that what that means?
No, council member. So what this specifically says is if the county has a shortfall in its RENA, and we just talked about RENAs yesterday, if the county cannot meet its RENA, specifically it's looking at high density, not being able to meet its high density requirement RENA, it would have the ability in coordination with city staff to identify, to properly analyze, and to rezone properties to higher density to meet their RENA requirements.
Can you give me an example of where that would apply? Because when you're talking high density as a county, what area in the county could you possibly upzone to high density to meet a RENA number?
So currently, the county has a RENA rezone application that they are processing. They have 14 parcels that they have identified that have property owner consent that are within our sphere of influence, which would be rezoned from agriculture or rural residential to their version of high density residential, which is about 30 units an acre. So it's kind of our intermediate
division.
Multifamily district. So they're in that process right now.
And council member, majority of these sites are in my district west of the 99, and I am supportive of increasing density west of the 99.
So help me understand that. My understanding is the county's not in the business of approving housing, that they direct housing to the cities. And my understanding and my experience here has been whenever somebody wants to build a new subdivision within the sphere of influence of the city or nearby, the condition is that they get annexed into a city. So why would the county be in the business of upzoning density? Wouldn't that fall into the city as a city application versus county?
So remember, RENA requires a jurisdiction to plan for the units. So theoretically, just because they've planned for the units does not mean that those units are going to be constructed in the county. So they could be zoned high density in the county, and it could be submitted, an application could be submitted, and since it's in our sphere of influence, it would be routed to us and referred to us, and it would either, we would either proceed with a possible annexation into the city, and then it would be developed in our city.
What you mean by possibly, part of the components of this agreement suggests that the county is holding our feet to a fire not to create new islands, new peninsulas. So this provision doesn't seem to make sense to me. If that is what we're attempting to avoid as part of this agreement, to have no more county islands and peninsulas, why would we agree to a provision where the county can still authorize and upzone those while still remaining in the county area?
A rezoning alone, though, does not create a county island. They're just simply rezoning to meet their RENA number obligations.
So they're simply upzoning property that they never intend to build to be able to say that they checked off their numbers on a paper?
I don't want to speak for the county, but all that is required under RENA is to plan for the units.
Okay. I think Council President addressed my question on the sales tax sharing, what it was and what it is now. The Section 14, Belmont, Minnewawa Avenues, Clinton, Millbrook. Now, I'm familiar with probably 24 intersections that are a problem. Why only these two are part of the agreement where the city's going to own them? Why these two? How did these two magically get on the list in the massive agreement?
The county requested them.
Why?
I'll let the committee members, but I believe their shared jurisdiction, at least one of them is a requirement of a development. And when that developer comes to process to do that intersection, it would be much easier for it to be in our jurisdiction so it can be processed quicker as opposed to having to go through a city process and a county process. The other location is part of the Midtown Trail, and we have been, it's another shared jurisdiction. As you know, we have different standards than the county, and we've been have developed the Midtown Trail in our portions of the city in a certain manner, and we want to continue to do that. And the county expressed that, okay, if you want to do that, that's fine, then go ahead and do it entirely in the city of Fresno. And if I misstated anything from those of you in the room, please correct me.
My outstanding question is, why these two intersections when we have 24 of them that meet the same criteria?
That was the two locations that their subcommittee identified as being priority. Like city manager mentioned, both share jurisdiction. Yeah. So that was a qualifying factor.
So simply their request. So they requested these two. Okay.
They identified them as priorities.
Understood. So for the record, all the other dangerous intersections we have in the city that are joint city-county jurisdiction that are complete havoc, those are not part of this agreement because they weren't identified by the committee of the Board of Supervisors. I just want to make sure we're clear about why those two ended up here. The other section that I had questions on, city manager or committee, is this was pitched as a 10-year agreement, but then it includes a provision that there's a 5-year automatic extension.
unless either party provides 180 days written notice prior to expiration.
Their party has the ability to exit this agreement after the expiration of 10 years.
10 years. What was the length of the previous agreement? Did it have automatic renewals as well?
I believe it was 10 years, but I think city manager is confirming that.
Yeah.
It was entered into on January the 6th of 2003, and I believe it expired for the first time in 2017. Jennifer, did you have that date exactly? Yes, December 31st, 2017.
Okay, thank you.
So 15 years.
Those are all my questions. Council President, the other thing I would simply add is I do appreciate the time that you and the committee members spent on this. There's been some adjustments I've seen, yet in my view, this agreement is problematic in a few ways. One, as I asked last week when we discussed the consultant agreement for the environmental for SADA, I was told that we have yet to receive the financial analysis of what development of SADA would cost. I'm hearing numbers from $4 billion to $500 million. We've always said that development should pay for itself, but somehow developers always come to us asking for a public subsidy when, whether it's waiving of impact fees, waiving of infrastructure improvements, having the city pay for those improvements. It never seems to be able to pay for itself. The concerning part for me overall is that this feels like not a tax sharing agreement, but a sprawl sharing agreement, where both the city would be essentially incentivized to sprawl to the east, while leaving behind some of the already developed and approved plans in the northwest part of the city and the southwest part of the city, without having a public discussion, or even this council being provided the financial analysis of what it would cost to expand to the east of this city. And I appreciate the $500,000 of additional sales tax revenue this agreement would generate, but to put it in context, that's a cost of half of a playground in a city park. So in exchange for getting $500,000 more a year, we would be down the path of spending billions of dollars on public infrastructure at a moment in time when we're about to go to budget reductions. Sales tax are down 2 quarters in a row. Our labor groups are already pressing us for work stoppages because inflation continues to be a challenge for everyone.
I'm sorry, I don't think that's correct about works. I just don't want any of our labor groups to freak out. Sorry, council member.
If I had a bill, I'd also be ringing it on the $500,000 number, council member.
I can tell you, we've just funded playgrounds at Roding Park, and they're $1 million each.
Well, I
they're
think
expensive
over the
playgrounds.
life of this agreement, it promises to bring in more than $500,000.
Yeah, it's $500,000 a year was the sales tax portion of it.
Sales tax portion.
Yes.
Let's be clear about that.
Yes, that's what I noted. Sales tax portion is $500,000. The rest of the property assessment, what is that estimated to be? Because this agreement doesn't include any financial analysis with it. So where is the financial analysis of this agreement? How much money are we talking about of additional revenue based on the negotiated points? Do we have that yet? I don't want to put you on the spot to give bad numbers, so do we have a financial analysis?
Yeah, so there are numbers based on the different areas that are identified by the different percentages, and it's basically an estimate because you don't know how much it's going to annex in and annex development.
So it's financial projections.
I guess it's a scenario. That's a better way to put it. So on the not substantially developed outside of SADA, and where our city share, this is in the 60-40 area, right, Ruthie? Our current So basically, from going from 38% to 40%, it's about an additional, and once again, based on how much land? Based on $100 million property value, it's about it's about $11,000 additional dollars the 2% gets us. In the
Say that again for one moment. You're saying that the 60/40 section is only about $11,000 more?
for each $100 million.
So what's the total value of that area?
Well, we don't know. It depends what you develop. It's your property tax valuation, so it depends what is developed there. So once I said, these are scenarios of just trying to get, so that's one part of it. Once you get into SADA of not substantially developed, going from the 38% to the 51% has a difference of a couple $1 million. On the substantially developed, once again, for every $100 million of property value, it's actually less money because we're going from 38% to 30%.
And that's where the whole de-incentivizing the annexation of county islands comes into play.
Understood. Yeah. Okay.
So, but I don't want to minimize, because I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we can only do a calculation, once again, based on $100 million of property value, but it depends on what is put on that property.
Yeah. So if it's affordable housing, there really is no tax. If it's market rate housing, it's one tax. If it's industrial, it might be a different value.
Property value.
Correct. If it's green space, no value. The other question I had on this agreement, which worries me, is not only does, in my view, put both the county and the city in the path of financial incentives for sprawl, but it also suggests that we're going to consider withdrawing our litigation as it relates to the general plan. Why is that provision in there? And this seems to be a financial agreement. Why are we incorporating pending legal matters to a financial agreement?
I just want to that's a great question. This was a request of the county side, but we made it very clear we do not have the right or authority to say what the council's going to do. We can only agree to bring it back for consideration, but there is no guarantee on outcome.
So do you guys have any problem with removing that provision? Because I don't like to mix two things into one pot. This is simply a financial document. I don't even know we can discuss the pending legal matter because it's not on the agenda.
This is a financial document. It's a document that covers annexations. It covers future growth. And so this was one deal point that the county requested that we do keep in here, but they understood that the three of us collectively do not have enough votes to just simply commit to dropping litigation.
Understood. So to legal counsel, can I engage in the merits of that provision and get into details of the pending litigation in this space now?
Can I ask a follow-up? If we were to actually strike that down, would you actually vote for this?
I think I would be open to. But I don't want to go to jail with Lisa Smith camp across the street if we're discussing pending litigation in public.
Councilmember, I would suggest that we do not discuss it in public.
So one of those viewpoints can't be discussed in public, is what your recommendation is.
I'm saying that the underlying litigation shouldn't be discussed. The fact that this is in here and why it's in here can be discussed.
Okay. Well, I think it should be removed from this. I think we entered that litigation on the merits of that matter, and the merits were discussed in great detail and thoughtfulness and after significant evaluation in closed session as attorney-client privilege. And I don't think it belongs in this agreement at all. It feels like a quid pro quo for the county, which should not be part of a financial tax sharing agreement. So those are all my questions on this matter and my comments. I would ask the council to consider putting this on next agenda so that everybody can read it and everybody can provide input. I do want to recognize that although this was given essentially half a day or a day of public notice, we did receive about a dozen or 24 objections from faith leaders, community-based organizations, residents of the Southeast Growth Area, and we received 2 letters of support from the industrial developers and from the residential developers.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you, Council President. I want to go ahead and commend my colleagues. I mean it when I say that I thought we'd never get here. When I think my reaction when we first found out about this ad hoc committee effort was a laugh out loud. So I am, surprised, pleasantly surprised that we've arrived at this point to have something for consideration. And so I do appreciate my colleagues for coming together and slugging it out with our friends down at the Hall of Records. As the mayor noted, we've spent years doing one-off agreements, but when projects have come before us, and that's not been totally productive, and it's been a tough conversation, especially with some of the developments out in the edges of the city. Within the inner city and the island annexations we've had within my district have been fairly routine and easy. Those have been easy to agree to. But I'm glad we have a framework that we can work off of now and have a discussion about. I could sit here and poke a lot of different holes in the agreement, but the fact is that despite what I believe is an imperfect process and an imperfect agreement, that there really is a net financial gain for the city here when I look at the different components of the agreement. I think it's going to result in more revenue for us than we have now. It's also imperative that we have a tax sharing agreement in place for the future of economic development in the city, and that's really the framework from which I'm viewing this agreement is primarily from an economic development lens and how we move forward with all kinds of different developments. I fielded a lot of calls this week, and especially yesterday and today, from many different folks in our community with many different opinions. And I have heard some of the concerns about SEDA from some of those folks. And I do want to be clear, while the SEDA area does receive the most favorable tax sharing split within this agreement, it's still a very, very far cry from what it would actually take for development in the SEDA area to pay for itself and for us to receive the revenue it would take to cover those costs of infrastructure and ongoing services in the sphere of influence area where we really have a blank slate. I think that's probably the number one reason why we have yet to be able to really bring that forward is the cost there. And so I do appreciate the improvements that we're seeing in the city's share. But for those who are concerned about SEDA, this really doesn't change the concern. The concern is that we can't pay for it. And I think even going from 38 to 51, that's still a far cry from being able to really cover those costs. And so those concerns remain unchanged for me. And I think should remain unchanged for anyone else who had those concerns initially. But notwithstanding that component, this is a framework that's going to allow us to move economic development forward within the city. And so I'm happy to offer my support to my colleagues on finally receiving what I hope is a deal, and I hope that we will approve this today, and I hope that the county won't blink twice on Tuesday and also do the same.
Thank you, Councilmember, and I think you made a lot of good points. And it's important to debunk the notion that this MOU incentivizes sprawl. I think we heard from our assistant city manager earlier, and while this might result in a couple million more generated in property tax, we haven't seen yet what the true cost will be for building out the infrastructure. And so there's still a lot of work that would have to go into, I think, getting any of us to the point where we can get confidently behind a decision of approving SATA, but that's simply not what we're doing here tonight. Up next, I have Council Member Bredefeld.
Yeah, I too want to offer my congratulations to the subcommittee and for all the hard work that you did to get us here. I remember when, I guess, Councilmember Chavez, the mayor, met with the folks from the county, and that didn't go very well several years ago. And here we are 4 years later. I'm not sure what changed that made it where they were willing to sit down and talk with us.
I would guess it's your election and Chavez's. And I think that's also the reason why we're here today versus next week.
Well, the bottom line is we're here, and a lot of people put in work, and I also want to commend Supervisor Mendez and Pacheco and their staff for bringing this together. I want to thank all the city staff, the attorneys, and all of your staff, Georgianne, for the great work that you did. The fact is, when there is no development because we don't have a tax sharing agreement or it's one-off, we don't get the property tax revenue. Without development, we don't grow. And so the fact that this has been 4 years without a tax sharing agreement has been terrible. Terrible for the city, terrible for the county. And so we've needed to get this done as soon as possible. Mayor, you mentioned about the development standards. The city manager is aware in my district there was a development that took place on Maple. According to county standards, they got property jutting out into a street, which is absolutely insane. Why that happens, I don't know, but I can assure you, as long as I'm on that board, that's not going to happen anymore. They're going to develop according to city standards, because anything less than that is completely stupid and idiotic. I hope the county staff is listening, because I'm not going to be a part of that, and we're going to develop according to city standards. When the city makes progress and prospers, the county prospers. We all prosper. And so this whole notion of the battle between the city and the county is going to change. I think that's going to change with 2 members from the city going over there who remember when they go to the county that they represent city residents who are also part of the county and county residents. So I think all of that is a good thing, and I think that's going to change. So I think this is a good thing. Is it ever a perfect document? No, it's never going to be a perfect document. There'll always be people who object to it, understandably. I think some of the issues that people raised have been addressed. But I think we need to approve this, move forward. Let's get this agreement done. I hope the county approves it. And then I hopefully we can get back to allowing growth to take place in an orderly, sequential way, and the community and the city and the county can prosper together, as opposed to other developments leaving the area because we are stuck not getting agreements done. So with that, I will certainly be supportive.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member Carbasi.
Thank you, Madam President. No, look, lots of great discussion. I think there was actually enough time for all the council to review everything, given all the questions we had. I just want to clarify with one statement that was made, because like I said, I read all the comments and I take them very seriously. There were not dozens of comments received in opposition. I want to be very clear about that for the record. That's not the case, and I'm going to call for the question.
All right, I have a call for the question. We do have a motion to approve by myself, seconded by Council Member Maxwell.
A point of order, Council President.
Yes.
I have a question for the city clerk. City clerk, did you receive all the emails that came in over the last few hours, opposition support, and are those part of the record?
Yes, Council President did call for those to be part of the record. Anything that came into the attorney's office or my office, the clerk general email, we sent out as tray memos.
Okay, just want to make sure they're on the record. Thank you.
Does that include all the ones that are cut and pasted their form emails? Like the cut and paste opposition?
If we received it, it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve, seconded by Council Member Maxwell. Any objection?
No.
Item passes 6-1. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you. That concludes today's meeting. Everyone have a great evening and get home safe.
Council President, really quick, I didn't I need to thank my team, Ruthie, who worked with you very closely, Jennifer, Scott Mosier, of course, the mayor. Just want to put that out there.
Thank you so
I know,
much.
sorry, it's over.